Before I knew the world was ending, I was a king. Now they call me the shipwright. After nearly a century, the task I was given is almost complete. This is my last chance to save whoever would join us, to salvage whatever knowledge I can, to help us rebuild. But the gods rule here, and they never do things the easy way.
I was able to wrap up page 10, and I've decided to start another character redesign series. Redesigning characters to fit into my setting has been a surprisingly useful exercise. To some, it may come off as a diversion or a rabbit trail, but I have not found that to be the case. First off, they've acted as a great entry point for people who would not have found this series otherwise. They've also been a great opportunity to do what I'm used to calling a vertical slice. There are a lot of stories and places in this setting that I'm looking forward to getting to, but at my current speed, I may not get to them for years. These character redesigns are a chance to pick something and do a very focused deep dive. The Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse helped me to push out what the Nephilim could be. The Oz series gave me an opportunity to explore just how much could be done to distort humanity in this setting. Now that I've done a few collections and I've seen how useful they can be to do a targeted exploration, I think I can get more intentional about how I use them. So I'm kicking off another series, this time based on Alice in Wonderland, and I'm going to be using it to expand my palette of witches. They're a faction I've done some work on. They've been sprinkled throughout various illustrations, but this will give me an opportunity to expand that palette. Now, a few ground rules. This is using Alice in Wonderland in the most general sense. It's a visual framework we all have some familiarity with, but I am not the least bit interested in accurately translating the source material. I'm starting with Alice in Wonderland, and like countless people have done before, I'm gonna just go do my own thing. This means there will be characters you're looking forward to seeing that I'm just not gonna touch, because I don't want to. If you're an Alice in Wonderland expert and you say, wait, but that's not how, shh, it's okay, I know. We're gonna have some fun designing some antediluvian witches. It should be fun. I hope you stick around. One thing I'd like to try this time around is starting off by establishing the baseline, Alice herself. By starting with Alice, all future designs will have a better sense of contrast and scale. Here I've built up the idea of designing witches, and I'm starting off with a woman who is not a witch. The idea behind this version of the character is that she was someone who was stolen by witches, the intention being to kidnap her, use her as a vessel, and failing that, a sacrifice. But she's escaped, and is now fleeing through witch territory, attempting to escape a bizarre menagerie of the creatures. I started off drawing a few different poses, but I really struggled with this one. I wanted to find the balance between showing the character, but also making sure that her pose helped to tell her story as well. Visual descriptions of the characters in the books are sparse at best. She wore a pinny, a blue dress that went past her knees, puffed sleeves, wavy blonde hair. The original illustrations received a blessing from the writer, so they're a pretty good indication of what she would have looked like. I didn't want to go too crazy, basically translating those descriptions into the costume language that I've already been exploring. Except in this case, I thought of her apron-like pinny as something that would have been given to her by the witches, something that all those who had been taken by them wore. Honestly, originally, I was going to skip Alice altogether. I didn't feel like I had a strong enough hook for her. When it comes to character design, you can add endless details. And don't get me wrong, I like detail. It can be done very, very well. And I'm not even saying that I think simple designs are innately better. When it comes to character designs, the ones that I like the most are the ones that can make a very clear statement in a memorable way. That can be done simply or with a lot of complexity. So I wasn't going to draw Alice because I didn't feel like I had that idea, that visual hook. But then out of the blue, the idea of giving her a mask and also drawing on the idea of the looking glass hit at exactly the same time. They kind of smashed together, and I realized that that would be a very easy way of connecting her to this story. I thought that that would be a great way to make the design more striking, to connect it more to the original material, and honestly to hit the more unsettling notes that I'm thinking of going with for this series. From a story perspective, I thought of it as a mask that the witches would put onto their victims that they planned to use as vessels. If the intention is for one of the Nephilim to possess the body, I like the idea that with this mirrored mask, they can look at the face and see their own, a symbolic way of showing that the host's identity was meant to be replaced. This is another one of those cases where I basically got all the way to the finish line, but I just wasn't happy with it. I set that finished version aside, and I redrew Alice in a pose that looked a bit more like a frantic run, something that communicates flight, escape. For the overall tone I'm going for, I think it works better. And with Alice wrapped up, this new series begins. Now on to page 10. I was just talking to my patrons about the fact that arriving at the road has made me so thankful that I took the time to go through a year of world building. Right from the get-go, I knew I'd find myself in circumstances like this, having to draw characters of vastly different people from different parts of the world. Spending all that time world building has given me a solid foundation that I can use as a jumping off point. I have a better understanding of the fashion, the technology, some of the factions, creatures, and because of that, it frees me up to really just have fun. In crowd scenes like this, unless there's a very specific narrative purpose, I can really just play around. Without the world building figured out, it wouldn't feel as much like play. With every new character, I would be concerned if I was adding something that worked or not, if I was breaking my own rules, if I was staying consistent. But it was time well spent. Now I feel like I can splash around with some very solid fences in place. I wanted to show that the road is populated by a wide spectrum of nefarious scoundrels. This is also the first time in the story that you really get a sense of how big the shipwright actually is. At 7.5 feet tall, he stands easily a head and a half above almost everybody else. I think this image in particular demonstrates that while the world is perilous, the shipwright is left alone more often than you'd think. The only ones willing to take a shot at him are the stupid, the desperate, or the proud. Not that there's any shortage of that, of course, but hopefully you can see why he's not just endlessly fighting every other human that he comes across. Most are just smart enough not to dare. I think about patronage a lot. Not Patreon, though I do certainly think about my patrons a lot, but also just the concept of patronage. The idea of wealthy people that wanted to spend some of their money to help make sure that something beautiful and meaningful was left behind. There were all kinds of reasons for patronage, of course. Some of them you'd call propaganda, some maybe even bribery, but I think it's safe to say that a lot of it was for just a genuine love of the game. People understood that what's the point in just having all this money sitting around if some of it doesn't go towards making a mark on culture, and ideally leaving it more beautiful than you found it. I've been thinking about that more in the context of our current storytelling landscape. Have you stopped to wonder? These days it seems common for stories to come out and just crash and burn, and you would expect that to be the end, and then another one comes out, and then another one, and another one. And from the outside, it doesn't appear that lessons are being learned. They just keep coming, and they just keep crashing. There's a few exceptions here and there, but it's a pattern we're almost used to at this point. I think that one of the reasons is patronage. These stories keep coming out because the people who are backing them seem to think it's more important that their story gets out there than that it represents some huge financial return. It's very easy to think of things in the context of return on investment. I put in X amount of dollars, I expect X amount back. But I actually think they're onto something. Stories keep getting funded, they keep coming out, and at some point the math just can't work out. But I think to some, the return isn't financial. The return is that they know their stories are told, that the cultural needle was moved in the direction that they really wanted. So what's cool about that is that we live in a crazy time where we all have the ability to be patrons. And yeah, it's in a small way. I'm sure very few of us have artists on our annual payroll, but in a small way, we have more opportunity than ever to support the culture that we want to see more of. And I think there's something to that idea of return on investment. It can be more than just capital, that helping to shape what stories are told means something. You may never see another dime from that particular investment, but if you can play a role in shaping the world we live in and trust that you will experience the benefits in another way, I think there's something to that. That's just been on my mind lately, something to think about. If you find people that are working on something that you believe in, that you'd like to see more of, you have more of an ability than ever to become a patron. Now, I wasn't trying to set myself up to talk about my Patreon, but while we're here, links in description. You can sign up for free if you want, get a feel for it. You can also become a YouTube member if Patreon's not your thing. So there's options there. Had to mention it in this context, obviously. And hey, if you're a wealthy heir and you want to become a classic patron, get in touch. How could I say no to that? There's been a lot of speculation about this girl and what her fate will be. And so far, no one's guessed correctly. But with these panels, that may change. Okay, I was really looking forward to this set of 4 panels. This is the trope of entering into a sketchy new place and getting a montage of dubious-looking characters, just to decrease the feeling of safety overall. So I started off with a bruiser, a heavy hitter that's adorned himself with spikes. Relatively speaking, if I get to do as much Dead Gods as I hope, we are still in the very beginning. But even this early, I wanted to have some representation of infusion. So a human that has been modified with the genetics of another creature. Here we have a guy hiding under a cloak in the early throes of serpent transfusion. This toothy mask is reminiscent of the warthogs, but I like the idea of showing that even the warthog fits into some kind of context. What exactly that is, I don't need to explain yet, but that's part of the fun of this. Just that this particular arrangement of elements probably means something, and the fun part will be connecting those dots later when I have the opportunity. And finally, because I just can't help myself, one of the shapers, the geometry cultists, disciples of Kane, who I'm starting to think is going to need his own video sooner rather than later. I'm going to be thinking about him while I work on the Alice series. They share my fixation on circles. I went through and did a tattoo pass, and I experimented a bit more with using some of my hand-drawn 3D plants for background texture. And with that, we have a brief glimpse of some of the denizens of the road. Finally, the armadillo driver speaks. He's a side character with a role to play, but I kept things pretty simple with his design overall. Because he's driving a Glyptodon, a prehistoric armadillo, I wanted his shape language to reflect the creature. The Glyptodon is very round, so I used those rounded shapes to make him look like he was associated with it. And with that, we have page 10. People have been doing some awesome fan art lately, and whenever it comes in, I try to put it in the credits, so I just wanted to shout that out in case you've been skipping it and that's something that would interest you. Thanks for watching.